All right. We'll start off with the first question. It's been about 12 years now since the Starcraft was released. How has it been for you guys to manage the legacy from the first game to the last, to the newest ones? Has it been awkward or hard to decide what to keep and what not to keep?
Definitely. When we set out to make StarCraft II, we did have a lot of examination about, well, what does that mean? The beginning of it was very simple. It was, we wanted to hearken to the legacy on the original game, which meant from a gameplay perspective. We wanted, strong economy, lots of fodder units that could die and be rebuilt, unlike what we had established in Warcraft 3, which was the hero-centric, mechanic. So that was set up pretty quickly. But then we said we want to be innovative in single player, for us at least, and on the online experience. But that was it. It was very vague. So as far as the story went, though, and carrying the story forward, we did have an idea for what we wanted to tell. And then it was a matter of sort of figuring it out into this new style of single player. So it took us quite a while to iterate through all that. And meanwhile, we were still maintaining StarCraft and upgrading it, adding patches and all that stuff too at the same time. So I don't know that it was challenging. It was sort of known that we were going to go through what we were trying to establish with the multiplayer game. But definitely there were a lot of hard choices. We said early 40 to 60% of the units would change as a part of that. So hearken to the legacy, same basic core mechanics, but we wanted to feel fresh and the tactics wouldn't be the same. So going through all that and saying, you're going to cut, whatever unit it was. If it was any unit that we touched in the original game, there was definitely always a lot of, even on our own team, you can't touch that unit. That's the best unit in the game, whatever unit it was. So, we went through and still made the tough choices and experimented and said, if it's really a bad deal, we'll switch back, whatever, and convince people. It was challenging at times, but overall it went pretty well as far as the multiplayer went pretty quickly to get through that, and I think we've landed on a fun, different enough experience, but still nostalgic for players that played the original that come along and play StarCraft II.
What do you personally think helped the StarCraft franchise to get so big within the gaming world?
I think one of the things that helped with that is just the fact that we continue to support the product. I mean, StarCraft was a great and fun game, but by releasing Brood War and then continuing to patch it and get the balance super tight, that kind of gave it its legs. People talk a lot about Korea, for example, that it was such a phenomenon in Korea, and it was and is, but it didn't happen overnight. It's not like we launched the game and then that day 2, everyone in Korea was playing. It took over a year before it was even being played with any earnest in Korea. And so I think it was just continued support of the product, a very fun game at its core, but ultimately continuing to change it and balance it over time.
And speaking of Korea, how much pressure do I feel that the product needs to be well received in Korea?
We certainly want StarCraft II to do really well in Korea, but we don't, there's not a particular expectation that we've put. We aren't trying to get rid of the original game. There's a lot of love for the original game there. But I think StarCraft II will do great as well. I'm not worried about it. I definitely want to see what the fans think, but overall, from having pro gamers play it and that sort of thing at the highest levels, I think the game holds up and has changed things up enough to be interesting, and I hope that both can live together there. We'll see. I expect to see something similar. Me personally, I think we'll see something similar to what we saw with StarCraft originally, that at first people will stick with StarCraft and then kind of look in on people that are playing Star 2. More and more people will gravitate towards it. I definitely think that we'll see players. I've already talked to players like Grubby and others that are pro players in War 3 and some in StarCraft as well that are already interested in playing professionally playing StarCraft 2. So we'll wait and see. It's happening now. Today's the day, so it's all starting.
The whole gaming world reacted when you decided to split StarCraft 2 into 3 parts, with Wings of Liberty being the first. Sorry. What made you decide to do this, and when will we Zerg fans get our part?
Okay, yeah, so as far as the splits in the story, that was really a side effect of what we wanted to do with single player. We knew a big overarching story that we wanted to tell, but how much content we need to be able to tell the first part, the second part, the third part, and then also to tell it in the new way that we have in StarCraft II, which internally we call it story mode, but it's all really about putting more choice into players' hands. All of our previous games have been very linear. Here we wanted to let you pick what missions to go on, what technology you had on those missions, hire mercs, all of these different things that we allow you to do in the game and experience the story sort of as immersed or just straight through if you want. And all those things meant we needed more missions or more levels to tell the portions of the story that we knew. So we announced the game prior to actually figuring out what this meant, what the single player experience was really like. After doing that and looking at it, we made the decision that it was a better experience to tell them kind of in episodes, really. And it is by far the most content we've delivered in a single product just in Wings of Liberty. But now we know that there's 2 more coming. So what we've talked about, Zerg's next. That's Heart of the Swarm that comes after Wings of Liberty. I don't have any details on that. We're still working them out. We want things to be different enough, still have player choice as a part of their campaign as well, but obviously not the same mechanics. And we've really been focusing on Wings of Liberty, though, since making that announcement, and have a lot of work before we'll get into earnest on any of that development in earnest on those. And then, of course, the third one is Legacy of the Void, and that will focus on the Protoss side and the final part of the story.
And you actually chose to remove the capability of playing LAN, local area network. Why did you do that?
Well, the primary factor was really about being connected. We wanted, as we already saw with World of Warcraft, that an online-only game works. We did our own testing and playing and found the experience to be just fine. The beta has shown that as well. And largely what we wanted to get away from, which is sort of a side effect of this, is we want the experience to be an online experience at all times, because what we felt like with Battle.net in the old days was Battle.net was sort of the hardcore button. You didn't go there unless you were going to play, serious, or go up there and play competitively. And what we wanted is a much more integrated online experience. So whether you ever play competitively or not, you don't need to go click a Battle.net button to do that. You're just connected when you get on. So once we did that, that was the primary motivation is the always connected experience. And once that's there, whether you want to play locally or not, you can do that, and that's fine through the online service.